Well, despite being the third party in the current CUSMA agreement, there will be no bilateral trade agreement with Mexico. But Ottawa says it is pushing forward to strengthen trade ties with the country.
In particular, Canada will continue to seek strong relationships both with Mexico and the United States for the benefit.
Tonight, a storm is rolling over North America. Not a storm of rain or wind, but of economics, politics, and power. What began as a bold gamble by Washington has turned into a crisis that is reshaping the continent in ways few imagined. Canada, the country that American politicians long referred to as the junior partner in trade, is suddenly seizing the advantage. And the United States, once the undisputed hub of North American commerce, is stumbling under the weight of its own choices. The first tremor is financial. The United States has now crossed the unimaginable threshold of $37 trillion in national debt. To put that in perspective, that is larger than the economies of China, Japan, Germany, India, and the United Kingdom combined. It equals about 140% of US GDP, and unlike the debt after World War II, this one isn't shrinking. It is growing faster than the economy itself. Every second, the government borrows tens of thousands of dollars. Every month, it spends more just on interest than it used to spend on entire cabinet departments. Within the next 2 years, interest payments alone are expected to exceed defense spending. This isn't just a math problem in Washington, it's a credibility crisis. For decades, the US dollar and US treasuries were seen as the safest assets in the world. Now, foreign creditors from Asia to Europe are quietly cutting back. Central banks are diversifying into gold, yuan, and even Canadian and Australian debt. Some investors are asking aloud what was once unthinkable. Can Washington still be trusted as the anchor of the world economy? And while these abstract numbers shake boardrooms in New York, London, and Beijing, the pain for ordinary Americans is far more immediate. Inflation is not a chart on a news broadcast. It is a daily, lived experience. A gallon of milk that cost $3.25 last year is now closer to $5 in some cities. Eggs have doubled in price in less than 2 years. The weekly grocery bill is $40 to $50 higher than it was in 2023. Rent is consuming larger portions of paychecks, with average rents up nearly 25% in major metros since the pandemic. Mortgages are punishing, with monthly payments on an average home now consuming nearly half of household income. Everyday choices reflect the squeeze. A mother puts back a pack of chicken because it no longer fits in the budget. A father fills his gas tank only halfway. Families cancel vacations, delay car purchases, or put off home repairs. Restaurants once buzzing with weekend diners are quieter. Shopping malls that thrived on discretionary spending are emptier. This slow suffocation of household budgets is more powerful than any political speech. It tells a story of an economy that looks strong on paper but feels broken on the ground. Businesses are reacting the same way. Retailers are slashing orders, factories are scaling back, suppliers are watching contracts shrink. Small businesses, the backbone of local economies, are cutting hours or freezing hiring. Job growth, once celebrated as America's triumph, is cooling. Layoffs are appearing first in manufacturing, farming, and transport, industries hit hardest by higher costs. But even tech firms are beginning to announce cutbacks as imported components grow more expensive. At the center of all this is Washington's gamble, tariffs as a weapon. In August 2025, President Donald Trump announced sweeping 35% tariffs on Canadian exports not protected under the USMCA Pact. The goal was to corner Ottawa, force it into concessions, and remind the world that Washington still dictated the terms of trade. But the move backfired almost instantly. Ottawa didn't flinch. Prime Minister Mark Carney made it clear. Canada would not be bullied into a one-sided agreement. Instead of begging for relief, Canada adapted. Cargo ships bypassed Los Angeles and New York, docking instead in Vancouver, Halifax, and Montreal. Canadian railways became crucial arteries for trade. Highways were upgraded, ports expanded, and airports modernized. Ottawa poured billions into ensuring that goods could move across its territory without touching U.S. soil. For the first time in memory, U.S. companies were dependent on Canadian infrastructure. Automakers in Detroit needed Canadian rail lines to move parts. Retailers in Texas relied on Canadian ports to receive goods. The weapon Washington had chosen was cutting into its own hand, and tariffs didn't stop at Canada. Combined with global inflation, they became a 1-2 punch. The cost of steel, aluminum, car parts, electronics, and groceries soared. Businesses had only two choices: swallow the costs and see profits evaporate, or pass them on to consumers and risk losing customers. Most did both. The result was pain on both sides of the counter. Picture a grocery aisle, a father scanning prices, realizing he can no longer afford both fresh meat and fresh fruit. Picture a gas station, a worker staring at the pump, stopping short of a full tank. Picture a small diner, loyal staff working shorter shifts because customers have stopped coming. These aren't isolated anecdotes. They are daily realities for millions. Meanwhile, America's exporters are facing a nightmare of their own. Overseas buyers are turning away. European firms offer cheaper machinery. Asian suppliers undercut American prices on electronics. Brazil takes over soybean contracts once filled by Iowa farmers. Germany and South Korea edge into markets once dominated by Caterpillar and John Deere. For exporters, once secure contracts are evaporating. And once those markets are lost, they rarely return. All of this is happening while Canada quietly builds something new. Far from being cornered, Ottawa is redrawing the trade map. It is strengthening ports on both coasts, expanding transcontinental railways, modernizing highways, and most importantly, diversifying away from U.S. dependence. Every port expansion and every new trade deal makes Canada less reliant on Washington. But Ottawa is not acting alone. The most surprising development of this crisis has been the Canada-Mexico axis. For decades, both countries were seen as side players in a system dominated by the U.S. Now, they are forging their own path. Officials from Ottawa and Mexico City have signed agreements to expand joint rail corridors, modernize ports, and even coordinate energy projects. Their message is simple: if Washington is unpredictable, Canada and Mexico will have each other's backs. Behind this alliance is a financial force few outside Canada even know about: the Maple 8. These are the 8 largest Canadian pension funds, controlling more than 2 trillion Canadian dollars in assets. Quietly, they are financing port expansions in Mexico, scouting rail projects that could connect Veracruz to Vancouver, and investing in energy infrastructure that links Mexico's grid to Canada's. Their vision is bold: a continental trade backbone that bypasses U.S. soil entirely. Imagine goods from Asia unloading in Mexico, traveling by rail through to Canada, and reaching global markets without ever touching American ports. That's no longer theory, it's under construction. And Canada holds another ace: energy. The U.S. imports millions of barrels of Canadian crude daily. Much of America's refinery infrastructure is specifically designed for Canada's heavy oil. If that flow slowed, Washington would face a crippling energy crunch. Gas prices would surge, refineries would scramble. Ottawa rarely hints at using this leverage, but the knowledge that it exists shapes every negotiation. Globally, the implications are just as dramatic. Europe is deepening trade with Canada. Asian buyers are signing long-term deals. BRICS nations are accelerating their push for trade in non-dollar currencies. China, always opportunistic, is expanding influence in Mexico and Latin America. For the first time in decades, Washington is not the uncontested hub of global trade. And history gives us a warning. In 1930, the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act triggered a global backlash that deepened the Great Depression. Many fear Washington is repeating that mistake, weaponizing tariffs, only to watch them backfire. But today's stakes are higher. America then was rising. America now is burdened with record debt, surging inflation, and fading dominance. So what happens next? Several scenarios loom. Washington could double down, raising tariffs higher, but that risks pushing businesses and households to the breaking point. Canada and Mexico could accelerate their alliance, making U.S. ports less relevant with every passing month. Global investors could retreat further from U.S. debt, forcing higher interest rates and inflaming Washington's fiscal crisis. And in the most dramatic scenario, Ottawa could leverage its oil exports, reminding Washington just how dependent it is. Each scenario points in the same direction. Washington's grip on North American trade is slipping. Canada, long underestimated, is seizing the initiative. Mexico, long overshadowed, is rising alongside it. Europe, Asia, and BRICS are stepping into gaps the U.S. once dominated. And the United States, weighed down by $37 trillion in debt and strategic miscalculations, is struggling to adapt. History may look back at 2025 as the turning point, the year the U.S. lost its uncontested crown, the year Canada claimed its independence. the year Mexico found its voice, the year global trade began to flow around Washington instead of through it. And make no mistake, this story is still being written. The storm is far from over. The choices made in Washington, Ottawa, and Mexico City in the coming months will determine not only who leads North America, but who sets the rules for the global economy in the decades to come. So I'll leave you with this. Is Canada truly taking the trade crown, or will Washington find a way to claw it back? Drop your thoughts below. And if you found this breakdown valuable, hit that like button and subscribe for more. Because the next chapter in this economic war may not just decide the fate of North America, it may decide the future of the world economy itself.